This is Edge of the Box, a podcast brought to you by WhoScored.com.
Hello, welcome back to the Edge of the Box podcast, a podcast by WhoScored.com in association with BetVictor. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by Jonathan Wilson and WhoScored's very own Martin Lawrence. I lied last week and said it was the final podcast before Christmas. It isn't. This one is, and we're here to preview all the football action on Boxing Day, if any happens at all. How are we both?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for asking, as always. Martin, you okay?
Yes, very well, thanks. I can't ask it back because you've already replied, but I would have just to be clear.
No. But you're back. You've not been on the last two. You haven't been on, Martin.
Just one, I think, but it could be two.
I'm
glad you've missed me though. It feels like longer, doesn't it?
Yeah, a long time. It's always good to have Josh filling in, looking out that window, though. We do always enjoy that. Although he didn't look out the window last week, there was actually stuff in the comments saying no Billy Gilmore mentioned, no Josh looking out the window, not good enough, basically. It's from that podcast. So, yeah, we have to try and make amends this week. We're going to start by talking about AFCON. It's been given the green light, Jonathan, which seems very strange in the current world that we're living in.
So I'm intrigued. Why do you think it's strange?
Well, just because of COVID. It's got off to a great start to the podcast.
No, but I just don't think. I don't think COVID cases in Cameroon are particularly high. I don't think there's any greater risk there. There's obviously risk
from the UK.
Yeah, but I mean, teams fly anyway.
True.
I think a lot of the reaction has been just because Premier League clubs don't like having this tournament happening in the middle of the season. But there's not really a way around that because hosting it later in the year is just not possible in several African countries. So, I mean, I'm going out for the knockouts. I'm still slightly holding back. Yeah, still haven't quite finalised plans. I'm waiting to see, how the COVID situation is. But the more I've looked into it, the more I think it should be possible to be, at least as safe there as I would be in Lambeth or Wandsworth, which are the two COVID hotspots of the UK at the moment, and where I tend to spend most of my time.
I mean, I feel like there's like a Christmas dinner where I've tried to say something at the start of the meal to impress my uncle, and he's completely backfired, and he shot me down. And now I'm just not going to enjoy my Christmas meal at all. Martin, we've got a top-rated AFCON 11, haven't we?
We do, yeah.
Hopefully, you can impress Uncle Jonathan with your.
I definitely won't impress Uncle Jonathan. It'll be a bit of light relief, I imagine. It's a bit of a hot-potch of a team just because certain positions not particularly strong, but we've built an 11 that is it would be an entertaining team, put it that way. In goal's pretty obvious, Edouard Mendy in goal. We've got a 3-4-3 formation for what it's worth.
We like it.
It's unfortunate that Matic isn't not eligible for Cameroon, but is withdrawn. I don't know if he's actually retired, but he hasn't played for years.
He retired for a long time, yeah.
So yeah, that would have been nice, but it's still a decent back three anyway. Of Mohamed Salisu, Southampton.
I think it was Mohamed Salah then. I was really confused.
Wouldn't put it past me, would you? Salisu of Southampton, who's had a really good season, actually. Took a long time to sort of settle in Southampton, but has finally sort of broken through. He's Ghanaian, for what it's worth. Romain Saiss, who I think could be a real big blow for Wolves.
Yeah.
Morocco international. Obviously, their back three has been consistent throughout the season, and when you take a part out of that and one that's been so consistent, they could have some problems. And Cheku Kouyaté completes the back three. It would have been Matip, but it's Kouyaté. And then the midfield pairing is interesting. Some pretty big names miss out. So Wilfred Ndidi misses out, and that probably goes along with what Jonathan has said a few times about him being off his usual standard since he's come back from injury. Let's say it is his lowest rated season in the Premier League according to our ratings. So and Thomas Partey misses out as well. So the midfield pairing is actually Naby Keita and Yves Bissouma. And then we've got wing backs, very attacking wing backs. Well, Maxwell Cornet on the left, who I think is passable because he did played left wing back for Lyon for years. Hasn't played there for Burnley, admittedly, so a little bit cheeky. And Emmanuel Dennis on the right.
Oh, come on, Martin.
We've shoehorned in because he has played on the right of a midfield five for Watford this season when they've played against the bigger teams. So we've shoehorned him in. I know that's a bit cheeky, but definitely deserves a place, and that allows you to play a front three of Riyad Mahrez, Mohamed Salah, and Sadio Mane, which is a pretty nice front three, isn't it? Pretty tasty. So yeah, pretty nice team. Edouard Mendy, Salisu, Kouyaté, Saiss, Keita, Bissouma, Cornet, Dennis, Mahrez, Salah, Mane. So some very good players that will be headed out to AFCON as ever. In terms of the teams that will be affected, Watford, although Dennis isn't a guarantee, I think we forget that actually before this season he's not actually been particularly good, and he's never started for Nigeria. He has had 3 caps, but all from the bench. Last one was over a year ago, so he's not a guaranteed call up, but you'd expect on the form that he's in that he would go. Ismaila Sarr is injured at the moment, but would likely go if he's fit with Senegal. They've also got Troost Kong, Adam Messina, Peter Etebo, who's injured as well. So Watford have 5 players. They've got the most minutes racked up of players that are eligible for AFCON, so they could be badly affected. In terms of the most minutes, it goes Watford, Palace with Kouyaté, Zaha, Ayew and Schlupp. Then Liverpool, Salah, Mane, Keita, and then Arsenal, Partey, Aubameyang, El Neni, which I think could be an important one. Without Partey and El Neni, they look very short. And Pepe as well, who scored in the week but doesn't get a look in the league. Yeah, the other one's obviously Chelsea missing Mondi, relying on Kepa now for the next sort of few weeks, or will be in the new year. And Leicester as well with Ndidi. Daka, Andy and Nacho is important as well, because that puts all the pressure on Jamie Vardy, isn't it? So I think
Daka, Zambia haven't qualified. So Daka.
Oh, did they not qualify? So they'll be fine. Leicester will be fine. Don't worry about Leicester.
Yeah,
absolutely fine.
Yeah, nothing to worry about at all there. Uncle Jonathan, thoughts on the 11?
It's actually better than I was expecting. I'd probably have Schlupp at one of the wing back positions, but other than that, yeah. And
thank you.
It's yeah. No, I'm full of Christmas spirit.
Would you like a little bit of trivia? Of course you would.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
So we can do a little to and fro. There are 4 teams. I'm going to let you have alternate guesses. There are 4 teams without any players eligible for AFCON. So who would like to go first in guessing?
I think Tottenham.
Correct. Dan.
Mania?
No.
Oh.
Jonathan. Back to Jonathan.
Norwich.
Correct. 2-0.
Oh,
Dan, you need this. You need this. Really.
I've got a team in my head, but I'm not 100% sure. I can't risk them.
Podcast gold.
Everton?
Gold. No.
Oh, dear me. It's embarrassing. Jonathan, you might have guessed the other day.
Iwobi for Everton. Oh. He likely won't go, but he is eligible. And Mbamin as well is eligible, but won't go because he's never
fit. I knew they weren't going.
Leeds
3-0.
Jonathan, stop
incredible.
It. Absolutely, stop it.
We need to see if Jonathan can do the full sweep, don't we? This is pressure now.
Newcastle.
Correct.
Oh my God, that is sensational.
Very, very good. We'll stop the podcast there. Excellent.
It doesn't get better.
Merry
than that,
Christmas, everyone.
Yeah, it does not get better than that.
Very impressive.
Well done, Jonathan. Sensational.
What we'll cut out all the pauses, and Jonathan will just rattle them off.
Bang.
Tottenham, Norwich, Leeds, Newcastle.
That was a great effort. It doesn't get better than that. There is literally no point doing the rest of the podcast.
It's quite hard to do a negative as well, right? Because you just got to go into each squad thinking, is there anybody there? It's not a pleasant form of trivia, I don't think.
No, I mean,
but you've thrived in that format, Jonathan, and I'm sure that has made your day. Really, you can't. Top that, I don't think.
I'm euphoric.
I knew I was in trouble when Fulham came into my head, and they're not in the Premier League. I know I had some problems at that point. Let's look ahead to Boxing Day. Then let's forget about the trivia. Nobody cares about that. Now, Jonathan, I know you're an avid follower of my Twitter. I don't know whether you saw this tweet that I put out during the Spurs-Liverpool game.
You put out quite a lot of tweets, don't you?
I do a lot of tweets. That's fair.
A lot of you have photos of you wearing slightly odd clothing.
Yeah, that does happen. You're paying attention. That's good, Jonathan. I've gone up in your estimations because you're at least paying attention to me now. Trent Alexander-Arnold, I said that in 10 years' time, he's going to be like a no-brainer. When people are putting across their all-time Premier League 11s, Trent will just be in everyone's team. He's going to be the best right-back of the Premier League era, isn't it?
Well, certainly that type of right-back, yeah. Of that very attacking, gets forward, score. I mean, he seems to be scoring more and more goals, but also the crosses, the assists. So, yeah, I think that's probably true. I also think, I think it's partly to do with the era he plays in. That even now, you get people saying, "Oh, you know, he's wasted at right back. He should be played in midfield." But I think fullbacks are an incredibly important position. I think there was a time, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, when you sort of occasionally could hide a slightly average player at fullback, and they could do sort of a solid job. I just don't think that's the case anymore. I think the best modern right backs are really good footballers and really good defenders, and have to be really fit, and have to be great deliverers of the ball, have to read the game really well, have to be tactically very astute. And I think Alexander-Arnold is all of that. So I think we live in an era of great right backs. I mean, you look at people like Reece James, Tariq Lamptey, Trippier, obviously not in the Premier League anymore, Kyle Walker.
Matty Cash.
Yeah, there are others as well. But he is the outstanding one. I think the way he plays creates certain issues, and I think we talked about that before, that he really needs to play in a team that presses hard, otherwise that space behind him can be exploited. But he does play in a team like that, so that's fine. I think that's the reason why he shouldn't necessarily be a first choice for England. But in terms of picking one of these putative teams of what is your greatest Premier League 11, assuming you are playing a hard pressing game, and unless you're Jose Mourinho, you're going to be, then I think that's a totally fair shout.
Talking of hiding average personnel, Martin, what do you think? I mean, what I'm saying is, I can't think of any else, but when you're picking your all-time Premier League 11, Gary Neville has always been a no-brainer.
Exactly, right? That's exactly what I was going to say.
Always Gary Neville. Everyone say, I can't think of anyone else.
A lot of people have said that, because this debate's come up a little bit of late, and that's sort of why we discussed it. A lot of people have said that this sensationalist, or too early to say that Trent could be considered in that bracket. I just don't think it is at all. The right back slot in any team of like Premier League team of the sort of era is always Gary Neville, Zabaleta, Azpilicueta. Is Trent Alexander-Arnold better now than any of those players were at their peak? 100% he is. 100%. Those were all very good defenders, and like Jonathan says, they're a completely different type of player. But if you're looking at Trent Alexander-Arnold is a right back, so does he belong in that discussion? Yes, he does, and he's better than those players. And he's played a lot of games. At what is he, 23? I think he's made 130 starts at right back in the Premier League, which is a good amount of starts. For what it's worth, that's more starts than Azpilicueta has made at right back. Yeah. So, and people would consider him because of the longevity of his career in the Premier League. So we did look into it in terms of the top-rated right backs since we acquired Opta data to run our ratings, which was 2009-10. So that does rule out the likes of Gary Neville. Sorry, Gary. We looked into it, and we set a minimum of 100 starts at right back, just because that seems like a nice amount. It's a solid amount to have made. And the top rated is Trent Alexander-Arnold with a 7.28. It goes. So I'll run through it from the bottom, and this sort of highlights the fact that there haven't been that many standout right backs in the Premier League era. 10th is Seamus Coleman. 9th, somewhat bizarrely, is Angel Rangel. 8th, I know. 8th, Cesar Azpilicueta. 7th, Kyle Walker. 6th, Zabaleta. 5th, Glenn Johnson. 4th, Bakary Sagna. 3rd, and this is controversial, is Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Has made a lot of starts, and basically a lot of it's down to his Crystal Palace days. He got incredible ratings at Crystal Palace from us just because of the amount of tackles and interceptions he got through. Not just the volume as well. I'm going to say it. His tackle success is sensational. Just doesn't get dribbled past. You'd have to put him down as one of the best tacklers in the game. He's had a really tough season this season. But yeah, Wan-Bissaka's 3rd, and Ivanovic is actually 2nd. Made a lot of starts at right back. A lot of people would consider him a centre back. Can do both, obviously, but 164 league starts at right back for Chelsea. So yeah, Alexander-Arnold is out in front now after what is a sensational season this season. He's the 2nd highest rated player in the Premier League behind Mo Salah for us this season. So I'm going to say it. Trent Alexander-Arnold, for me, he would get into my Premier League team of all time at right back.
I mean, we've already had one good point where we could have ended the podcast after Jonathan's quiz success. Saying Aaron Wan-Bissaka is the 3rd best ever Premier League right back. Probably end the podcast for good. That way we'll probably never be back talking about football again.
He's a very different type of fullback, isn't he? And I think one of the issues he's had at United is he was fine. I mean, you think back to that game. God, was it only last season when United beat City at Old Trafford?
Yeah.
Was that sort of March time earlier this year? Is that true? Or was it last year?
I don't know, to be honest.
But he was brilliant in that game. It was a game when McTominay scored that last minute lob.
Yeah.
And United won 2-0.
Mistake, yeah.
That
would have been
2020.
2 seasons ago, yeah. Not
2
last
seasons
season,
ago.
one
But he was, Wan-Bissaka, I think, was man of the match in that game. He was brilliant. I think he made 8 tackles or something.
Yeah. Well, his rating has got progressively worse with every season, which isn't a good sign.
Yeah.
But he did start off at an incredibly high standard at Crystal Palace, which is why he got the move to Man United. Was very good in his first season at Man United for my money, for what it's worth, and has just sort of progressively struggled a little bit more season on season. So he would probably fall down that list pretty quickly if he continues in that vein. But
it depends what sort of right back you want. If you want a defensive right back, I mean, obviously at the minute he's short of form and confidence, but I think he's fine. It's just if you want somebody who's going to be good in the ball and get forward, then he's obviously not.
The topic's definitely getting away from us here. The only person watching at this point is Gareth Southgate, loving the right back chat. Can't get enough of it. Let's talk about Leeds a little bit then. Big problems, in big trouble, Jonathan. I'm worried about Leeds.
I mean, it's predominantly injuries. You were in uncharted territories in terms of Bielsa being his 4th season at the club. He's never done that before. You do wonder, and it is wondering. I don't know this, and I don't even know how you begin to prove it. But you do wonder if that sustained intensity over 4 years is one of the reasons they've had so many injuries. But if you've got 11 players out who are in contention for first team places, and 8 or 9 of those are genuine regulars, it's going to be really, really tough. I don't really think the last week should worry anybody too much. Getting hammered off Manchester City is a thing that often happens. Getting hammered by this Arsenal, now they're in form, I think is the kind of thing that can happen. They played really well, I thought, at Stamford Bridge, a bit unlucky not to at least get a point there. But they are sinking, and they have got a lot of players out. Bamford obviously has been out most of the season, and they've relied on him for goals. I think that's then put pressure on Rafinha. I think Dan James is a good signing for them, but again, you'd want him playing off Bamford, and he's had injuries. And of course, Calvin Phillips is absolutely critical to them, not just for the defensive solidity he gives you, you're in front of the back 2 or 3, but also because the speed of his passing, the way he moves the ball quickly from front to back, is so essential to how Leeds attack. And actually, if you look at the stats, although they've had some sort of high-profile games where they've let in a load, so the 7 against City, the 4 against Arsenal, the 5 against Manchester United, if you take out goals conceded against sort of a putative big 4, and plus Arsenal, but I mean, Arsenal are top 4 at the minute, aren't they? So that's sort of, if you take out goals against, say, the top 5 or 6, the defensive record this season isn't actually that bad. The problem is they haven't scored goals. And that is a real issue for Bielsa's team. They're not scoring goals.
Are you worried for Bielsa at all, Martin? Because he doesn't feel like a manager suited to a relegation battle at all. And it also, this might be unfair, feels like the kind of manager, if things aren't going well, he doesn't really want to be in a relegation battle. He could walk, and Leeds are so heavily built around his image.
Yeah. Well, I think most Leeds fans would be desperately worried if Bielsa not lost interest, but lost what is clearly a real passion for the club and the town. And that can happen when you're getting pummeled week in, week out, and the injuries are just mounting against you. Like, it just gets worse and worse. And ironically, we're in a situation where their only fit centre-back now, do you know who it is, Dan?
No.
It's Koch.
So many injuries.
It's Koch.
Oh, he's back.
Koch is back in. Koch is in.
Back.
And he
no more
is the only fit centre-back. No more Koch out. Koch is in, and he's the only fit centre-back, and he'll be partnered by Luke Ayling, who can play there, but he's naturally a right-back. Everyone else is out. Llorente is now ill. Cooper's out. Strike is out. Even Charlie Cresswell, who's their sort of up-and-coming youngster at centre-back, is out. So they're really in trouble. And yeah, the Phillips one is the big one, isn't it? I just think if you look into their without record in terms of Calvin Phillips since they got promoted, 16 games without Calvin Phillips. They've lost 12. And they've conceded 2.44 goals per game in those games. So that protection that he offers, is, for what it's worth, their goal difference in the 40 games with Calvin Phillips is plus 27. In the 16 games without him, it's minus 21. So if you stretch their average goal difference out over an entire season without Calvin Phillips, they'd get a minus 50 goal difference over it. So he affects them massively. The last team to get minus 50 goal difference in the Premier League was Huddersfield, for what it's worth.
Wow.
So yeah, they score, like Jonathan says, they score a lot more goals with him in the team as well, because he's the metronomic one, isn't he? He dictates the tempo.
Oh yeah, we all know what that word means.
They're exactly. They're a decent side with him in it, but the problem is looks like he's out for another sort of possibly another month or more. So that's a real problem. January coming up, they probably will need to do something, but what Leeds can do at the moment, and the sort of I don't know what fixes them at the moment. Just players returning from injury fixes them, but yeah, they're in a pickle.
I mean, I think, to be fair to Bielsa, I don't think it'd be a case of losing interest in the club. I think it would be feeling that he is no longer able to help them survive. I think he is a very moral person. So I think the two things that historically have led to him walking out are if he feels he's been betrayed by the board, if he feels they've reneged on promises, which is what happened at Marseille, is what happened at Athletic, or if he feels he's got nothing left to offer. I don't think it's a case of him, in a way you might see it with Mourinho, of him sort of thinking, I've got to protect my reputation here. I just don't think that's how he thinks. And I don't think there's any evidence of him, of any real tension between him and the board. But I think obviously there's a possibility for somebody as intense as that he feels he's exhausted and he can take them no further.
Bet build us, Martin.
This might be of interest to quite a few people based on Leeds' problems. I think most people would predict a quite comfortable Liverpool win, and it is tricky because of COVID cases. We don't know what's going to happen, but for what it's worth, with bet builders, if a player is out that's in the bet builder, the bet is just voided. You get your money back basically, so the risk isn't massive. What we've done is we've gone for Mane, Salah and Jota all to score in this game. Mane scored in his last 2 against Leeds. Salah has 4 goals in 2 starts against Leeds, and Jota has 7 goals in his last 8 games in total. So for all 3 of Liverpool's front 3 to score, if they all start, I think a lot of people will fancy that based on Leeds' problems at the moment. Was 15-2. BetVictor have boosted it to 9-1. It's only 5-1 elsewhere. So a big price, a big improvement. So like I said, worth waiting for the team news. But if those 3 do start, I think that looks a really nice price.
And what's who scored score predictions for the Dominic Matteo derby?
We have gone for 4-1 to Liverpool.
4-1. Jonathan?
4-0 to Liverpool.
4-0, and I've gone, feels slightly conservative, of 3-0. Yeah, I've gone for 3-0. Obviously, Jota, Salah, and Mane to score.
Exactly.
To come in mine. That makes complete sense, doesn't it? Yeah. Let's move on to the next game now. Villa Park, Villa v Chelsea, Boxing Day tea time. Jonathan, they haven't really played together much at all since his arrival at the club, because Watkins was injured when Danny Ings arrived, and then Danny Ings has been injured as well. At some point, I think Gerrard will utilise them together, but they don't really fit with the formation that Gerrard's playing at the moment, or the system. Do you think he can get Ings and Watkins to work?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I'd be surprised if he played them as a 4-4-2, but I think you can play Ings wide coming in, and I think the way Gerrard plays up front 3 tends to be quite narrow, so that sort of fits with that. Given the ludicrous glut of right-sided forwards that Villa have, I guess that to an extent makes sense. Get the ball down the right, cross it to the back post. You got 2 of them, two players with decent air coming in on it, so that is an option. I would assume that when Ings was signed, it was as a sort of alternative to Watkins, as a backup to him, rather than necessarily as somebody to play alongside him.
Well, 30 million. I think Dean Smith was speaking about playing them together. Yeah, and going 4-4-2, but then we never ever played 4-4-2.
It certainly wasn't a Dean Smith signing, though, was it? I don't think it was one of those. I was one of those where I think something came available quite quickly when Grealish was about to leave, and they thought, "Look, we can do this. If we can do this quickly, hide the Grealish disappointment a little bit." It was the signing, wasn't it? That was just boom. Just happened.
Yeah.
And it was like, what? Danny Ings has gone to Villa. And yeah, it looked a really good signing at the time. I'm not saying it isn't a really good signing, But yeah, that pairing does look a bit confused. I think when you watch Villa, and it's something that I've observed, Dan, I don't know if you have, it's pretty obvious when they have played together which one has played in a two before. Like Danny Ings, for my money, he looks for Watkins, and Watkins doesn't really look for Ings. And that's not really a criticism of Watkins.
I know what you mean.
He's never played in a two, so he needs to get used to that, because Ollie Watkins definitely isn't a selfish player, but he doesn't have that link up. Danny Ings played with Shea Adams and played in a front two for years, so he knows how to do it, and he does look to find Watkins, I think, more than the other way around. So I don't know. But what Jonathan said, I think, is quite interesting, because a lot of people would say Watkins is the natural one to go out to the left, and that has happened this season. But I do think there is a case for Ings to be the one that comes in from wide. Personally, I just think he's probably got more about his game, more intelligence about his game. And
Villa are playing two number 10s, aren't they, behind a striker as well? So
yeah,
it does make more sense for it to be Ings, to be honest.
Yeah, and Watkins is more of a box finisher. He's more of a box player. He's instinctive, picks up good positions. He runs channels excellently, presses excellently. But in terms of his finishing, he's a box player. Danny Ings is a bit more, maybe a little bit more cute. So yeah. The one that I could see working, but it isn't something that Gerrard has ever done, is Buendia behind the two of them. Could that work? That would be something that might be worth trying. But then when the likes of Leon Bailey come back, it's Bertrand Traore. They're wide players, aren't they? So
Trezeguet's back now as well.
Trezeguet as well. I don't feel like he'll get a look in personally, but there we go. So yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah, I don't think it looks like a natural partnership at the moment. So and I do think it was signed to be a partnership, like you say. I do think that was the idea. So if it doesn't work out, then there will be some questions. Good
time to play Chelsea at the moment, isn't it, Jonathan? A little bit of a wobble, not looking like the beast that we thought they were.
Yeah, I mean, before the League Cup quarter-final win over Brentford, they won 2-7. Before the Wolves game at the weekend, they've gone 6 without a clean sheet, and keeping a clean sheet against Wolves is given the way Wolves just don't score goals, is kind of pretty standard. So yeah, I think there's a lot gone wrong there. I mean, I think it's just down to injuries. That Kante came back for that Wolves game, and I think probably played more than. Well, I think Tuchel said that he didn't really want to play him for a full game, but ended up playing him more than he wanted to. Kovacic being out, and because the Saul signing hasn't worked out, that they haven't had the cover in that area that they'd like to have. So yeah, we. I mean, it sort of feels that Tuchel came in last season, went for that 3-4-2-1, almost as a short-term fix, and I sort of expected over summer he'd go to the back four, which is what he used all the time in Germany, or pretty much all the time in Germany, and in a PSG. And for whatever reason, he hasn't done that. And maybe that's because he thinks that Rudiger and Azpilicueta work better as the wide centre backs in the back three. I guess he's got incredibly potent wing backs, but it sort of always has felt this sort of bodge job, this sort of halfway house solution. And I wonder now if we're seeing the consequences of that.
Yeah, so many defenders out of contract as well, Martin, coming up for Chelsea. It does feel like there's just a bit of uncertainty in general around them at the moment, which I would have said a month ago would have been impossible. And they've stumbled in games where you'd really think they wouldn't have done as well in recent weeks.
I think Jonathan's right. The 3-4-2-1 had looked really, really effective, even until quite recently. I mean, there were the back-to-back games against Leicester and Juventus, wasn't there, where they were excellent in both. And those are, well, Juventus maybe not anymore, but those aren't easy games. And yeah, since then they've just looked a bit uncertain. Like Jonathan said, injuries have been a problem. I think Kovacic has been a really big miss. He started the season so well, and he's missed 10 games. Well, hasn't started 10 league games now. They've only won 4 of those games. They only conceded twice in the 8 starts that he made, and now they're conceding pretty much every game, aren't they? So he's been a really big miss, and is a player that's well liked by Chelsea fans, and for good reason. And I think he was just showing signs of improvement, and yeah, was becoming more and more important in that midfield. And he's back now, I think, returning to fitness. So that could be a big thing. But defensively, they've had a wobble, and even Mondi in goal, who'd had an excellent start, he's had a bit of that West Ham game in particular, but couple where he's not looked as sure of himself. So Yeah, it's probably a short-term thing, but I do agree that it's a good time for Villa to play them, and they should go into the game with some confidence based on how they've played against Chelsea in the past. Even the reverse fixture in the league, Villa played really, really well and lost 3-0, and then played a sort of second-string team in the Carabao Cup and took them to penalties and played well for periods of that game as well. So I think they'll go into this game thinking they can get a result. A draw would be a good one. But they won't be playing for a draw at all, I don't think.
No, not under Steven Gerrard. What's the bet builder for this game?
So it kind of links into all three of our predictions for this game, so worth rattling them off now.
Okay.
So who scores is 1-1.
I'm 1-1.
Also 1-1.
There you go. As if by magic. 1-1 across the board. Both teams have scored in 5 of the last 6 meetings. 2 of the last 4 have ended 1-1. So the first leg is for the game to end 1-1. Then it's 2+ cards for each team. This has been a really tasty fixture. I don't really know why, but specifically at Villa Park, there have been 42 cards in the last 6 games between the teams at Villa Park, and at least 2 to each team in 5 of those 6 games. So we're going for 2+ cards to each team, and Chelsea to have 7 or more corners. Villa have conceded 7 or more corners in 5 of Gerrard's 6 games in charge. Chelsea have had 53 corners in the last 6 meetings between the teams, which is almost 9 per game. So yeah, that is 1-1 draw, 2+ cards for each team, and Chelsea to have 7 or more corners. That was 41-1, now 50-1. So I know you like a nice 50-1, Dan. So
That's
I'm
big.
sure you might have a go on that one. So yeah, very big price. As ever, all of our tips will be in the description and on social, and as we've alluded to plenty of times over the course of the series, do gamble responsibly, especially at this time of year.
Yeah, and talking of getting on it, that of course is the John Terry derby, Villa versus Chelsea. Next up is Newcastle against Manchester United. I don't know why I did that. What's that all about? Newcastle.
Excited for this
Newcastle v Manchester United the day after Boxing Day, the 27th. I think that's a disgrace, by the way, putting a game on the 27th. Everything should just be on Boxing Day. It's not fair on a team not to have Boxing Day football, so I completely disagree with the schedule there. Is Newcastle v Manchester United? Martin, you want to do a Newcastle transfer focus here? Have you got any suggestions?
Have I got any suggestion? I think it's just
a whole 11.
No. It's just the debate really as to how they approach this transfer window, because it's massive, isn't it? And it's the frame of mind that they go into it in. They can really attack it and go big. But I think the signs so far would suggest that they're maybe being a bit more shrewd or a bit more prudent than many might have expected.
No one wants to deal with them.
Yeah, but I think that there is a realization now that relegation is a real distinct possibility. It was already, but Eddie Howe hasn't made a great start. They've played better football, but I think even the appointment of him, a manager who doesn't set up teams to defend well at all, his Bournemouth sides conceded an average of 66 goals a season in the Premier League, which is a lot. And the defence was the problem. So I don't know. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but you think maybe they might be thinking perhaps we should have gone for a more defensive coach and then got us through to January and then build on a solid platform. They don't have that solid platform to build from. So I think they should be not planning for relegation at all, but they need to. It's a really precarious window for them, isn't it? It's a situation unlike any other, really, where they've got all the money in the world, but there's a decent chance they'll be playing Championship football next season. Nat Phillips, top of my list to go to Newcastle. I think that would be a great signing.
I think they might even be agent. You are. You touting him.
Yeah, he's injured unfortunately, but he'll be back. He'll be back soon. They might be looking at Eddie Nketiah. Hasn't really lit it up in the Premier League by any stretch.
Is that the problem?
Probably need a second choice striker, another striker. Wilson isn't. It has injury problems. Usually, most seasons he has injury problems. The one thing I would point to as well, since Howe's come in, or more since Bruce left, is St. Maximin's gone completely off the boil, and he was the player, wasn't he? He was the sort of the spark in the team, and he's really sort of fizzled out, for want of a better phrase. And Joelinton's probably been the best sort of attacking player in that time, and they did have that sort of default under Bruce in the past, not recently, where they could sit deep and then St. Maximin go spring, basically. and that worked to an extent, and that's not what they're doing anymore. But yeah, they need a little bit. Obviously, we've said before, they need midfielders, they need defenders, but getting those in the sort of profile that they'd want is going to be really tough. So yeah, I think they need to be a little bit cautious.
I just want to shout out Jonathan's tribute to Josh there. A great window look whilst Martin was talking, I noticed. Had a really good look out the window there. There's something going on. Tribute to Josh. Anything exciting?
It's a very short man.
It's Josh, actually. It's Josh with a leaf blower.
Yeah. Great times, great scenes.
A very short man.
Well, it's just surprisingly short. It didn't quite make any sense, but it turned out he was quite short. I don't know if you noticed earlier, but I waved at the cat as well when it.
I did notice that. I wondered what you were doing. Did he cat wave back?
No, he's I don't know. He's quite a cold figure, that cat.
Yeah, no waves from the cat.
The thing is, I feel slightly guilty because you know that I have these issues with the plants on my terrace getting blown over, so I had to move them to protect them a bit from the wind. But in doing that, I've blocked off the easy little kind of run through that the cat used to go through. So he now has to hop over the top, and every time he gets there, and he looks at me as if to go, "Why are you making me jump over the fence?" And then hops over the fence. And today he actually sat on the fence and stared at me. And that was when I acknowledged him.
That's why he's not waving back. Annoyed, upset with your formation.
The look of disdain.
Albert, he's called. He's very nice, Albert. Not my cat. It's from 4 Doors Down.
Well, you've done well to get to know the cat's name from 4 Doors Down. That's good.
Yeah, well, I got it from his owner, not from him, to be fair.
Yeah, good. Makes sense.
Moira, she's called.
Where do we again? I feel like ending the podcast. Where do I go? Where do I go with this? Okay. One of the players Newcastle are linked with quite heavily is Kieran Trippier. Great player. I love Kieran Trippier. That's not going to keep him up.
Well, it would help. I mean, I think he's a really, really good defender. I just don't know why he would want to go there. I mean,
The cash, Jonathan. That's why anyone's going to go there, isn't it? Really, they're not going there because Newcastle.
But I mean, he's playing in an Atletico side that's in the last 16 of the Champions League. Why would you give that up for a relegation battle in Newcastle? That doesn't make any sense to me. It's not that he's fallen out of favour at Atletico.
No.
So I mean, in fact, maybe he's sick of Spain and wants to come back to England. I don't know. It's possible. But that would seem a slightly strange move. I think the other problem Newcastle have is they don't have a lot of football expertise in the boardroom, and I think the search. I mean, that's they're obviously pursuing Dan Ashworth, and if he comes in, I think he'd be a very good appointment for them. But that may temper what they can do in the transfer window. Certainly until he does arrive, if he does. I think you saw that even with the appointment of the manager. We saw that month of just names being fired about all over the place. They nearly got Emery, and then he had second thoughts for last minute for whatever reason, and then they end up going back to Eddie Howe, who they could have got a month earlier. And that's sort of, I don't know, I sort of felt that slightly undermined Eddie Howe from the start, in the same way that Nuno was undermined at Spurs. He's 4 points from 6 games. To be fair to him, it's been a pretty tricky run of fixtures. I don't think you'd expect them to get much out of Manchester City. And although they lost 4-0, they played okay in that game. If they got the penalty they should have had, then it might have been slightly different. But really, 4 points. I suppose it's been tricky games. Leicester away, they were pretty poor in. The 4 points, though, from those 2 home games back-to-back against Norwich and Burnley, are pretty much a minimum requirement.
Yeah.
And I say that really 6 points is a minimum requirement, but because they got the red card after, 10, 12 minutes against Norwich, you think, okay, drawing that game is not a terrible result. But they really do need to start picking up points pretty quickly. And I think they're fortunate that the likes of Watford and Leeds, maybe even Southampton, are starting to look a bit vulnerable and probably are within range.
Let's look at Manchester United then, Martin. Since Solskjaer left now, since Ole Gunnar Solskjaer departed, there's been 6 games. Who's scored have got a top 10 Manchester United players from those said 6 games?
The sort of top of the rankings isn't probably not surprising. We'll come to that. So I'll run from the bottom. So 10th is Bruno Fernandes. And interestingly, he's the only one in the top 10 whose rating has actually decreased since Solskjaer left. He was also one of the main players to stick up for Solskjaer, wasn't he? Particularly at the end. But yeah, he's 10th, so he hasn't really kicked on. He's struggled a little bit since Solskjaer left. Ninth is Harry Maguire. Everyone, for what it's worth, all bar Mason Greenwood, who's 8th. His rating is identical to what it was under Solskjaer. Everyone else has improved. So Maguire's 9th. Alex Telles is 7th. He's an interesting case, isn't he? Has played, I think, 5 games since Solskjaer left, mainly due to injury to Luke Shaw, but has even played when Shaw's been fit. So that's interesting. And the same on the other flank. So Diogo Dalot has come in for Wan-Bissaka, who we mentioned before, has struggled. But Wan-Bissaka is actually 6th. His rating has gone up substantially. Diogo Dalot 5th. Scott McTominay 4th. Cristiano Ronaldo is 3rd. His rating's actually increased a little bit. It's not increased as much as the other players because he already had a decent rating, but he's 3rd. And then the top 2, not surprising, David De Gea, they've needed him, and I think that's telling that it hasn't all been rosy since Solskjaer left. They've had to struggle through games. And Fred is way, way out in front. His rating is 7.69 in the 6 games since Solskjaer left. That's an increase of 1.16, which is vast. So, yeah, he's been superb since Solskjaer left, and credit where it's due. He's a player that gets a fair amount of criticism, but maybe given a little bit more license to get forward in the current setup. He's playing really, really well, and definitely the success story so far.
Yeah, Fred's going to be one of those players, isn't he, Jonathan, that's laughed at for years, but then turns really good and everyone loves him.
Yeah, I mean, he still has this sort of haplessness, doesn't he? Kind of when things go wrong for Fred, they sort of, if something goes wrong, it always seems to go wrong for Fred. But I mean, we saw Shakhtar, he's a good player. I just think he's another one of those, a bit like Sancho, who has been thrust into a sort of destructured system and has struggled a bit to cope with that. And I think he wasn't really helped at times by Solskjaer. For instance, that game against PSG when he got the early yellow card. And you sort of think you've got to take him off because he's going to get sent off. Oh, he's been sent off. And that was obvious to everybody. And yet he was kept on. It's I guess moving from Shakhtar to England, you always do have a slight doubt as to is he clearly a step up, but he's been a good player there. He's played well for Brazil. He's clearly a decent player. It's just whether he can find a structure to suit him. And I don't think he's been helped by playing in a team that for a long time hasn't really tracked particularly well and has often left the defensive midfielders a bit exposed.
Can I have your predictions for the Nicky Butt derby, please?
2-1 to Manchester United.
2-1, Jonathan? 2-1 to Manchester United. Who scored?
3-1. 3-1 Manchester United.
3-1 to Manchester United. I've gone for 2-0 to Manchester United. Let's catch up now with Sam Boswell from Bet Victor. We're going to look at the relegation dogfight. Sam, welcome. How are you? Good to talk to you.
Yeah, really well. Thank you, Dan. And looking forward to an absolute festive feast of football. Fingers crossed COVID doesn't impact the team news too much and we get some absolutely brilliant games.
Yeah, could quite easily be absolutely nothing on Boxing Day, but as you say, fingers crossed there is some football to watch. We're going to talk today about the relegation markets. Leeds have probably been in flux in that, I would imagine. Yeah, the relegation market has been hotting up. Leeds obviously having some real issues with injuries. Their fantastic support nonetheless can't stop them getting beat in games. 3-1 now to finish in the bottom 3 and be relegated back to the Championship. We'll run through the other prices. Norwich remain the shortest price at 1-7, and their fate does look almost sealed, unfortunately, for Dean Smith. Going to be some turnaround needed there. Newcastle may have all the money in the world. They're going to need to spend big in January, we think, 8-13 to pull off the impossible and try and stay up. I think they've got a little bit of a squeak. Watford, 8-11 to go down. Obviously, a bit of a yo-yo club, if we're perfectly honest. They could be dragged well and truly into the mix. Burnley, just a shades of odds on now at 10-11. Appreciate they get out of it most years, but I think Sean Dyche has got his hands full and be interested to see how they get on. And there's a team in there, Dan, that I think you want to give a mention to at a big price. Southampton, 7-1 with ourselves. I'll let you make the case. Yeah, I think they're a big risk, Sam. I think teams like Watford, I think they've probably got enough goals in them to stay up. Southampton, I don't think they've got enough goals. Armstrong, I think, has only scored 2 since he joined the club. He was to replace Danny Ings. They've lost Danny Ings' goals. They're not the most secure at the back. They've got goalkeeper issues now as well. I just think things aren't all roses at Southampton. I think House and Hurtle's probably not massively happy with how he's been backed as well. So I think they could get sucked in. I really think they're in a bit of trouble. I think at such a long price as well. I think they were.
Yeah, and there's a lot of factors you've got to consider. Obviously, we have got quite a bit of fixture build up for some teams. You've also got to look at the likes of squad depth. And as you say, if you can't score goals, you're not going to win games. You can pick up the odd draw here and there potentially, but you need to be scoring. I think Leeds will be okay, personally. I think that they'll get themselves out of it. My big worry out of those teams mentioned, I'd actually sooner be a Burnley backer than a Newcastle backer. I do think Eddie Howe will get money to spend, and I think it's going to be a case of effective signings rather than glamorous signings. I wouldn't be shocked if we can see Newcastle out those teams pull off the great escape. But like I say, it's a really interesting market. Plenty going on. All the other prices can be found over at betvictor.com. I will just touch on the Boxing Day games, though. Should they all go ahead? This looks like an absolute Christmas nightmare for us. We've got short prices all over the show that people get stuck into. Liverpool v Leeds, obviously a very short price at home. The Reds. You've got City 1-6 to get the better of Leicester. You've got Arsenal 2-5 away at Norwich. You've got Chelsea in the evening 4-6 away at Villa. And then we roll into Monday where United are 4-9 to beat the seemingly struggling Newcastle. We're going to need a result out of somewhere, or I think it could be a very, very late Christmas present to all the punters out there. It's going to be a good set of games. The only thing I'd like to add as well is obviously this time of year, there's a lot of sport on the box. Everyone's enjoying themselves, but do continue to gamble responsibly. It's a really important thing to consider. And you might want to hold your bets till you see the team news with everything going on at the moment. It's a difficult time for teams with injuries and obviously COVID. Definitely seeing people playing a bit later once they can see what's going on. And I think that's always a sensible piece of advice we can give punters.
Everyone's favourite time of the podcast now. It's time for the Just a Minute section. Jonathan, you're going to start, and you've got Burnley against Everton, and the only person I can think of is the Aaron Lennon derby.
Oh, very good. Yeah, so Burnley, 2 points from safety. I still sort of think they've been playing all right this season. They just struggled a bit for goals. Their last 6 games, they've only lost 1. They've only won 1, so 4 draws in there. And that's partly, I think, because of the struggle to score goals. Haven't scored for the last 3 games. But in that spell, they've only conceded once. I think it's sort of interesting as well that the sort of negativity around Everton. They are 6 points above Burnley, so it's not that bad yet. But 14 of their points did come in the first 7 games of the season. They've only taken 5 points from the last 10, so they could conceivably get sucked in that relegation battle. Injuries have been a massive problem for Everton, and they just seem to be getting worse. I think Yerry Mina is actually the one they've really missed, along with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He's still out, but they're also now without Richarlison, without Salman Rondon, for what that's worth, but he is a centre forward, without Gray, without Delph, without Townsend, without Davis. So they're really short on numbers, and so I think this is an opportunity for Burnley. I'm going to say 1-0 Burnley.
1-0 Burnley. I've gone for 2-1 Burnley. Who scored?
We've gone for 1-1. Differential.
1-1.
Like it.
Differential. Very nice. Martin, your first game to preview is Manchester City v Leicester. The Kasper Schmeichel derby. That's the easy, but I'm going to go with it.
Having been dropped for the win over Newcastle due to their behaviour off the field, it remains to be seen if Jack Grealish and Phil Foden are still on the naughty step. The former is finding out pretty fast that he won't get quite the same level of protection or forgiveness for his antics off the pitch than he did when he was the star boy at Aston Villa. Also seems little coincidence that Kyle Walker hasn't been seen since he picked up that nonsensical red card against Leipzig, while Ferran Torres is somehow edging closer to a move to cash-strapped Barcelona. For Leicester, it remains to be seen how many of the clutch of players that tested positive for COVID-19 will be back available, though Brendan Rodgers will hope to have at least one centre-back available. Jalal Soyuncu started in the week against Liverpool, but did come off, so I don't know what the status of that injury is. Johnny Evans is still out and likely to miss out. Like I mentioned before, Jamie Vardy has an excellent record against City, but he could be rested again, with Rodgers mindful that Iheanacho will be off to AFCON soon and Patson Daka in good form. The team playing away from home has won the last 4 league meetings between these two, but given the shape that both playing squads approach the game in, with City more rested as well, having failed to defend their customary Carabao Cup, that trend should change. We're going 3-1 Man City.
4-1 Man City. Here, Jonathan?
3-1.
3-1 Man City. I mean, where are Barcelona getting 50 million for Ferran Torres from? That's my question.
No, it's bizarre, isn't it?
I don't know how they can do that, but
I think they've got a bank loan, is what I saw. But they will have to sell players in order for him to be able to actually play. I don't know.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel very worthwhile, that, to me, for either team particularly, but never mind. Norwich v Arsenal, Jonathan, the David Bentley derby.
Well, Arsenal, after all our scepticism about them, seem to be back in form. So they won 4 in a row now, if you include the League Cup game, which, obviously a second string side, but still winning 5-1, even against the League One opponents, is useful. And I think what we've seen with Arsenal this season, and it continues a trend, they're good at beating teams they should beat, particularly at home. Obviously, this is away, and their away record hasn't been great, but they were very convincing winners at Leeds last week. And Norwich, for all I think they have improved under Dean Smith, they've only taken 2 points from the last 5 games. They've had 3 defeats in a row. They only scored 1 goal in those 5 games. They haven't been easy games at all. And certainly at Tottenham, I think they played pretty well. But their injury problems are disastrous at the minute. So no... how many players? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 players out. So I think it's going to be a struggle for them. I'm going to say 3-0 to Arsenal.
3-0 to the Arsenal. I've gone for 2-0 to the Arsenal. Martin?
Yeah, 2-0.
2-0 to the Arsenal for you as well. Next up for you, Martin, Spurs v Palace. Oh, come on, Daniel. The Wayne Routledge derby. Let's get it on. Tottenham v Palace, Martin. Off you go.
Tottenham were somewhat forced into the 3-5-2 shape that Conte deployed at Inter against Liverpool last time out, and certainly looked far more dangerous on the counter. Harry Winks impressed in the absence of Højbjerg, and he could keep his place, while the Kane and Son partnership looked more effective than it has all season in that game. After combining for a record-breaking number of goals last season, they'll look to get that back up and running. Sessegnon was a surprise selection over Reguilon at left-back in that game, but is now injured, so the latter will return. For Palace, James McArthur could make a long-awaited return to the side and has been missed, but Will Hughes has finally come into the side in recent times following a move from Watford and will hope to keep his place. Elsewhere, despite being fit enough for the bench in the last 6 games, Eberechi Eze is still yet to start for Patrick Vieira, while Joachim Andersen should return to partner Mark Guehi. Tottenham have won their last 6 league games at home against Palace, conceding just once. In fact, the Christian Benteke goal in a 4-1 defeat last season in this fixture is the only goal Palace have scored in their last 8 league trips to Tottenham. Indeed, the player to have scored the most goals for Palace against Tottenham is Odsonne Edouard in 9 minutes in the reverse fixture. He's the highest scoring player for Palace against Tottenham in their entire squad. We're going for 2-0.
2-1 to Spurs here. Jonathan?
Sorry, I just looked that up. 2-0, did I say? I did say 2-0, yeah. Yeah,
2-0.
sorry.
Bit of a stumble over Højbjerg's name there as well. Martin, happens to the best of us, doesn't he? Yeah.
I was literally just thinking about it before I said it. I was like, Dan's going to be tracking this. Like,
it's a hard one. It's a hard one, Højbjerg. I've got it now. I can do it when I don't need to.
Højbjerg.
Yeah, we've got it down.
No problem.
Jonathan, West Ham v Saints in capital letters on the screen here for some reason. West Ham v Saints, and I do not have a player. I don't have one. I'm struggling.
Don't know.
It's a real
someone like
struggle.
Steve Lowe. No, not Steve Lowe.
Steve Lowe. I was thinking of Neil Shipley at one point, but then I don't think he played for West Ham.
I'll have a think while Jonathan is speaking.
Yeah, I'll do the same.
West Ham struggling a little bit at the minute. I think even their League Cup quarter-final was indicative of how things have been going recently. Not playing particularly badly, but just not getting the results they were getting early in the season. So I think there's probably a bit of a regression to the mean going on. They've also, I think, really suffered from the injury to Ogbonna in that win over Liverpool. So they've only won 1 out of 6 in the league since then, which was the win over Chelsea. But I think that is also telling that they're much better against teams who come onto them, who give them space to run into. I think both Jared Bowen and Michael Antonio much prefer that. And those problems at the back have been compounded by the absence of Zuma, and Cresswell is now a doubt as well, and Kufal is suspended for this game. So that's potentially the whole back 4 out. Southampton, 3 draws and 3 defeats in the last 6 games. Goals have been a problem all season, but I think defensively they can hold West Ham. It was 0-0 at St Mary's early in the season, and I think it'll be something similar. I'm going to go for 1-1.
I've gone for 2-1 to West Ham. Martin?
We have gone for 2-1 to West Ham. I've got one for what it's worth. Quite smug as well.
I felt like I was. I mean, I've heard you typing away there. You've Googled this.
Well, I thought of one, and I was like, I need to validate it.
Okay, fine. I was going to say, you can't be smug if you've just Googled. I felt like I was on the cusp of something, but I just didn't quite get there.
I like it as well. Ayal Berkovic.
Of course.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, your next one, Brighton v Brentford. I sound like Jose Mourinho. Impossible. There's not a Brighton Brentford player. There's no one you can come up with for Brighton v Brentford.
I mean, this preview could literally be me reading out a list of the Brighton players who aren't available because there's so many of them. It would pretty much take up the full minute.
Did any of them used to play for Watford? I mean, for Brentford.
Well, let's go through them. Dunk, Alzate, Webster, Duffy, Mope, Gross, Welbeck, Sarmiento, Locadia, Steele, Duffy suspended, and Veltman is a doubt. So Brighton are really, really up against it. Their form hasn't been great recently. Drawn 6 and lost 3 of the last 9. Only scored twice in the last 5. But Brentford have been on a bit of a funny run. They had that dip, taken 8 points from the last 5, so they have stabilised. So I think any sort of immediate relegation concerns have been pushed to the side. But I thought they looked pretty poor against a makeshift Chelsea in the League Cup. I still think they should have too much for this Brentford, just because Brighton are so low on numbers. So I'm going to go 2-1, I think, to the away team, to Brentford.
I've got exactly the same. Who scored?
We've gone for 1-1.
I've realised as well that impossible. It's Pep that says impossible all the time, not Jose, so I haven't got that wrong. And I didn't come up with a player. Brighton Brentford. There isn't one. There just isn't one.
Wait. I'm sorry to put in here. Mope?
Bloody hell, he was on the list. He was on the list as well that Jonathan read out. Absolute shambolic. Oh, dear.
I tell you who did play for both. Neil Mope.
Yeah.
Plucked it.
That's a disgrace.
I just got this voice in my head there. I don't know.
It's weird.
You went through all that list of players, and I was specifically listening out for anyone that might have played for Brentford. And I know full well that Mope played for Brentford and still didn't click. Really, really poor. Yeah, the Neil Mope derby, excellent. We've got a Boxing Day. Actually, no, before we get onto the treble, what's the predictions league table looking like? The COVID, it's just thrown it into disarray, hasn't it?
Controversy, because Dan, you didn't. I'm going to bring it up. You didn't submit your predictions for the weekend's games. Admittedly, I didn't ask for them, but Jonathan sent his. Didn't need asking, just sent his. So yeah, you actually denied who scored a 3-pointer as well. We said 4-0 Man City Newcastle. So the game weeks had to be voided. So you've ruined basically the whole season, the whole show. And
there's only 4 games played in the end, weren't there? So.
There were 4 games, yeah.
And I would have gone 4-0 to Man City as well, 100%.
Would you? Okay, 3 points to you.
That would have been my prediction as well.
So yeah, I will need to catch up on where we're at. I know that you're still in the lead, but
it's easy now. He just doesn't send any more predictions.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was specifically asked this week, so I did. I will say, when we did a show that wasn't a preview, I just didn't think, because it wasn't incorporated into the show. So yeah, I just didn't do it.
You should know by now. Every week we do our predictions.
I can only apologise. I am very sorry. Let's make it up to everyone, because I'm sure the general public's pretty upset by this as well. We've got a Boxing Day 3 p.m. treble, haven't we, Martin?
Well, yeah, we've had some recent success in general. Obviously, we've not been tipping much on the show in the last couple of weeks because of all the sort of COVID uncertainty. But before that, we had 2 weeks in a row where we landed 20 to 1 bets. So really good. One of them was one of the trebles, and then we followed it up with Man City Wolves bet builder, I believe, which was 20 to 1 as well, which landed. So yeah, we're back this week with a treble, and I'll kick us off, shall I? The who scored leg is for Gabriel Martinelli to score any time against Norwich. Just based on the fact that Arsenal should win that game quite comfortably. Martinelli's in really good form. 3 goals in his last 2. He's had a direct hand and a goal in 5 of his last 6 as well. So, yeah, in really good form. Should start having been rested against the mighty Sunderland in the week. So, yeah, Martinelli to score is the who scored leg.
Yeah, my leg fits in with my prediction. So I've predicted Man City 4, Leicester 1. So I've gone for there to be over 3.5 goals in that game, and Manchester City to win. Leicester cannot defend to save their lives. Jonathan, your leg?
I've gone Tottenham to beat Palace and under 4.5 goals in the game.
Nice. And all that comes to Martin.
So it was 19 to 2, boosted to 11 to 1 for that one. So maybe a slightly lower price than we usually shoot for. But I think that for what it's worth, those tips all marry up with our predictions. So we've all gone for Man City to win and over 3.5 goals. We've all gone for Tottenham to win and under 4.5 goals. And we've all gone for Arsenal to win quite comfortably. And Martinelli looks a good bet for a goal scorer in that game. So, yeah, 11 to 1, the treble.
Yeah, I like it. I like it very much. And that's the end of the podcast for this week. Thanks ever so much to you guys for joining me as ever. And thanks to everyone who has tuned in as well. And let's thank Sam from BetVictor as well. And thank BetVictor for continuing to sponsor us. If you're not already subscribed with your post notifications on, if you could do that and help our subscriber base grow, we would all be very grateful. That's all we want for Christmas, really, the subscriber numbers to go up. Hope everyone has a great Christmas. We're going to be back on New Year's Eve, so watch out for that. If your post notifications on, you'll know exactly when it's out. Have a great Christmas, as I say, and as ever, please stay safe.